no increase. We're offering a % increase.
If the government doesn't respond to our proposals that support quality education, we will have to consider what our next steps will be.
For the second time, a day-long strike by Ontario high school teachers as the standoff continues between the union and the province. Bargaining is expected to resume next week, but what will it take to get a deal? Many parents are asking that question today as some high schools were closed across the province, including here in Toronto. Lorenda Redekop has the latest on what the two sides are saying.
They picketed outside schools they'd normally be inside, teaching. The union leader visited them on the picket line.
We have given the mediator our availability. We're very much in her hands, and so, there's an opportunity to get back together, it sounds like.
But the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation has demands it wants met first, including cancelling planned cuts and mandatory e-learning classes. It has the support of NDP leader Andrea Horwath, who took on the issue in the legislature.
Cancel the cuts. Cancel the cuts. Stop hurting everyday families and let teachers and students get back to work in the classroom.
My message to OSSTF is to cancel the strike that is needlessly hurting students in the class of this province.
The education minister continues to insist this is really about money. The teachers want a 2% wage increase per year.
We're being fair. We're being reasonable. Governments of the past have offered no increase. We're offering a % increase, which is in line with the entire public service.
Plus, CUPE education workers who already settled for 1% are under a Me Too clause. If another education union settles for more, they get it too.
We haven't had an increase and inflation marches on. So we are ultimately poorer than we were before several years ago. Tie this into deputy ministers getting a 14% raise, and I don't quite understand where they're coming from.
High schools will reopen tomorrow, but the dispute continues. And all this is on a week when elementary school teachers just stepped up their Work to Rule campaign. So more job action could be coming. These high school students enjoyed their day off, but say they don't want a larger full-blown strike.
I think it's a great opportunity for the boys to go out to the rink and rip some puck.
I'm sure that there will be more work in the end of the year than before, so this will lead to more stress.
This afternoon, the two sides agreed to resume talks early next week. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
And it appears the OSSTF and 3 other teachers' unions will band together tomorrow. EDFO, which represents public elementary teachers, and OECTA, which represents English Catholic teachers, and the AEFO, which represents French language teachers, will hold a press conference tomorrow morning at 9 to discuss next steps in the bargaining with the province. We will have coverage of that for you tomorrow online at cbc.ca/Toronto, CBC Radio 1, and of course, right here on CBC Toronto News at 6.
Looks at the clock, turns the corner for the win! Got it! Kawhi Leonard! With the game winner! Iguodala lining it up.
I was like, all we got to do is go get one. Kawhi said, expletive that. Let's go get them both.
Curry lets it fly. Canada, the NBA title is yours.
It is the fact.
Enjoy this moment and have fun with it. Ha, ha, ha,
ha. Yeah! It's a laugh and a player that changed Toronto sports history, leading our Raptors to their first ever NBA championship. The Claw is back in town. The Raptors are facing Kawhi Leonard and his new team, the LA Clippers, tonight at Scotiabank Arena. Greg Ross joins us live from the court. And Greg, the last time you were there, our Raptors got their championship rings, but someone important was missing.
Absolutely, Dwight. A big piece of that championship puzzle was not here. And I have to admit, it was a very emotional night here during the home opener when the Raptors received those championship rings. But I think everybody that was in the arena that night would admit there was something missing. It did feel like something was missing, not having Kawhi Leonard here in the building to also receive his championship ring. Well, that changes tonight. Kawhi Leonard, in a pregame ceremony somewhere on this court here behind me, will receive that championship ring that he was such a big part of delivering to fans here in Toronto. And I can tell you, this is the hottest ticket in town right now. People spending a lot of money to get tickets to be at this game. I mean, we're only in December, but this feels like a playoff atmosphere here inside the Scotiabank Arena tonight. Fans are excited. And I think the debate right now is whether or not they cheer for Kawhi because he is going to be wearing a visitor's uniform, or if they boo him. Kawhi Leonard had something to say. We talked to him when he arrived at the court here earlier today for morning shoot-around. Kawhi Leonard barely had time to shoot a few baskets on the court he called home all of last season before he was summoned by the throng of waiting media. Despite the circus-like atmosphere, Leonard says it brought back some good memories.
It's my first time back in the city since the parade. Obviously, those flashbacks come back, driving over to the arena.
Flashbacks like this.
Turns the corner for the win!
And this.
Canada, the NBA title is yours!
Many credit Leonard with delivering the NBA title to Toronto. And tonight, in a ceremony before the game, he will receive his championship ring. Leonard was humble when asked what kind of reception he expects from fans at Scotiabank Arena.
I mean, it'll be some cheers, but definitely, I think, more boos because they want to win the game. Not going to be cheering for a player that's on the opposing team. They're still rooting for the Raptors.
Regardless of whether or not they cheer for him, Leonard did show his gratitude towards Toronto fans with this massive billboard in Dundas Square today. You guys literally just walked out of the office with no jackets so you could see that.
Yep, that's exactly right.
There was a steady stream of fans who flocked to the giant billboard to snap a picture. Well, you tell me, why is that so important?
Well, he came, gave us everything that we've always wanted, which is a championship, and he delivered, and he went home.
Obviously miss him a lot because that was one of my favorite athletes of all time, so yeah.
And still is, even though he left.
Still, honestly, the way the guy carried himself on and off the court represented Toronto and Canada, honestly.
I'm sad that he's not here, but you know what? We have all the love and respect for him. Happy he's back.
We are very grateful for Kawhi, what he had to, what he accomplished.
No hard feelings?
No hard feelings, of course. We love him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were amazing last year. You know, they rode with us through the ups and downs. I was just talking to another media circuit, and I was telling them how we were down every series pretty much except the championship, and, you know, they stuck through it with us.
Yeah, you know, Kawhi Leonard, when he came out onto the court earlier today, the one thing he commented about was this retro floor they've got down. They didn't have this last year. This is something new they brought back this year, so he was excited to see that. He was back out on the court just about a half an hour ago to do his regular pregame routine. We saw it a lot last year, very meticulous with that pregame routine, and I got to tell you, I was standing right here so close to him and watching that game face. I remember how comforting it made fans feel last year when they would see Kawhi Leonard with that game face. Maybe not feeling so comfortable today as he comes in as a visitor tonight, Dwight.
You're absolutely right about that, but I really hope the fans don't boo him. Not this time. Maybe if he comes back again, but tonight will be thank you, Kawhi, and thank you, Greg. 7 women are warning brides about a Toronto photographer who has taken their money and their mementos. We first brought you the story about photographer Shelby Morell. She disappeared on a few of her clients in October, but since then, more brides have come forward. Nali Nanowski has the details.
I have no photos of my whole ceremony.
Like everyone else, I didn't get anything out of it.
These are the only photos the women have of their weddings. Out of focus, overexposed, captured by their guests. The photographer they hired, Shelby Morel, was paid to deliver professional shots, but never did.
I was just shocked that
Debbie Wiley has been waiting the longest, nearly 2 years, for her wedding video.
every 3 months she probably reaches out to me, says she's got some type of family emergency or gives me another excuse, and then promises the videos for me and then disappears again.
Wiley and Lily Nguyen were the first brides to contact CBC about Morel. That was in October. After numerous attempts to reach Morel, she only responded to CBC once, in an email saying that she was ashamed by her behavior and the women will receive what they are owed.
She said she will email me the USB containing the footage, but never had.
Never happened for you?
Never happened.
Since then, 5 other women have come forward, bringing the number to 7. The most recent is Megan Burgess, who got married in March.
Why would you do all of that work and then just not give the files? This is not the hard part of the job. We've been trying to figure out what the legal options are.
Between them, they're out nearly $10,000. Even though they'd likely win a lawsuit, their best bet might be Superior Court.
They could bring a form of what's called an injunction. And that's where you ask the court not for money, but for a court order compelling this photographer to provide all the video and photography that she took.
Before they go to a judge, they do have a message for Morel.
I would really just like to have some sort of documentation of that little section of my ceremony, that there just aren't any existing pictures of that.
It doesn't have to be edited or anything like that. I just send a USB and I'll do the rest of the work myself.
And I'd also want, obviously, everybody to understand what they're getting themselves into, so we just want to get that message out there for other people who might see her name pop up.
I can't tell you how many times we've contacted Morel. We've even gone to her home and knocked on the door. The women say the most frustrating part in all of this is that they still see her active on social media, and they believe that there are other people out there waiting for their photos. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
Hopefully some of those people see this story, and remember, if you have a story you would like us to look into, we would love to hear from you. Just send us an email, torontotips@cbc.ca. Just what is baby Jesus doing in a cage in this Danforth nativity scene? I speak to the people behind it and the message they're hoping to get across this holiday season in a few minutes. Right now, let's get our first look at the forecast with Colette.
Yeah, and boy, Dwight, we have got some very cold air that has moved in here today. And right now, our readings, I mean, they're cool enough, but when you factor in these very strong winds, we have significant wind chills. So these are the temperatures, -7 to -8. You're doing a little bit better there in St. Catharines at -5. It's -9 at the moment in Kitchener. And then here come the winds, and this is what we're looking at, -teens. Kitchener almost -20. In terms of how it actually feels, the sustained winds are relatively strong, seeing in Toronto over 40 kilometers an hour, and then some of the gusts on top have been over 50 kilometers an hour. More of a due west component to the winds now, so it's shifted enough to give a few areas some breaks that were experiencing the snow squalls, but it's just putting down some of those squalls in other areas. We've also have been seeing a little bit of that light snow kind of passing through the GTA. That is moving off towards the east now, but some of the squalls in the areas under the influence, those will continue here to the east of Georgian Bay, around Barrie and Midland area, Parry Sound. You're still looking at that chance of picking up additional accumulations, and there are snow squall warnings, the areas in white, and then watches in the areas in blue, where 10 to 25 centimeters before these winds will let off a little more by tomorrow. Overnight tonight, we'll have clearing skies, -9, feeling like -17, and tomorrow afternoon, that's a little better. Increasing clouds in the afternoon, but we're headed to 0.
Better than -9. Thank you, Colette.
A lot better, yeah.
The New York Times is reporting a multi-million-dollar settlement between the disgraced film producer Harvey Weinstein and his accusers. The newspapers say a $25 million deal was reportedly reached between Weinstein, his bankrupt studio, and dozens of his alleged victims. The report says the deal will not require Weinstein to admit wrongdoing or pay his own money. More than 30 female actors and former Weinstein employees have accused the producer of offenses from sexual harassment to rape. Meanwhile, Weinstein made an appearance today in New York related to another court case. The trial, scheduled for early January, is on charges of rape and sexual assault involving 2 women. An East End Toronto church is urging Canadians to reflect on what's happening to migrants and refugees south of the border with a reimagining of the Christian nativity scene.
How many generations does it take to forget that we're all refugees? That's my question. When I see this, I'm reminded.
It's great to make this point that there are certainly places nearby that are doing that kind of thing to migrants.
I see a child needing warmth behind a cage, which I think is probably a pretty powerful statement about reality in the world right now.
As you can see, baby Jesus is placed in a cage with a solar blanket. Similar to what's happening in the U.S., many South American children have been separated from their parents while seeking asylum and are being detained in different facilities at the U.S.-Mexico border. Earlier today, I spoke to the 2 people who put the installation together, and I wondered why they thought it was so important to create this scene.
When I think about the story of Jesus and what we see in Scripture, it's a story about the ways in which empire is encouraging Jesus' parents to have to be traveling on the road to give birth in this unideal situation. And then just a short while later, Scripture talks about the ways in which the family has to flee King Herod. And so for me, making this connection as Jesus as a migrant, Jesus as a refugee, and then thinking about the plight of refugees and migrants today was an important one.
What kind of reaction have you been getting? Because I guarantee you've been getting some reaction to this.
Most people love to be challenged by the conversation. There are some other people that maybe don't like something so sacred being changed or modernized, but I think that just adds to the conversation.
Bigger conversation we're having is about refugees, and I heard when you guys were talking about this, I think it was you that said, well, Jesus himself was a refugee, and that's why one of the reasons you felt it was important to do this.
That's right. One of it is just that it's part of our Christian story since the beginning, but also the fact that I believe that as Christians we're called to do justice in the world. And so we also have a responsibility in our faith to engage in the heartbreaking images that we're seeing in the news and to pray over them and discern. Let our hearts be broken by injustice so that we can then be empowered to make change in the world.
Some people for this specific issue say, well, this is an American thing. This is happening at the U.S.-Mexico border. We're in Canada here. Why are we doing this here?
So one of the most immediate connections we can make is the fact that Canada is a signatory to the Safe Third Country Agreement.
Yes, we are.
And that's been since 2004. So actually for over a decade now, we've been complicit in the ways in which the United States is making decisions around how migrants are seeking asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border.
Any negativity coming your way for this, what do you have to say to those people out there, those traditionalists that might say take offense to Jesus not being in a traditional quote-unquote manger?
I mean, people are challenged by it. Somebody said on the talk radio, next thing they're going to do is support gay rights and make a cross that's a rainbow cross, and that literally is our church's logo. So yes, we are speaking out for justice in many different ways. I would just like to challenge them to think what it means to be a Christian, not just to believe in Christianity and read the Bible, but to engage in the messages that Jesus was teaching us about loving our neighbors and taking care of those less fortunate.
Do you think we kind of forget sometimes the genesis of this story and what this story, especially the Christmas story, is really about?
That was certainly part of the inspiration for why Jane and I did this work. It's such a busy time of year. We get so caught up with all the social things and the fun, and then when we come to church, we talk a lot about waiting for Jesus to arrive, and that often means that we don't get to talk about what's happening right now that we need to address.
We heard a loud noise, and then the house kind of shook.
You don't think that something's going to crash out of the sky.
shocked accounts of a plane crash off Vancouver Island with no survivors. The RCMP say there are multiple casualties. We will take you to Gabriola Island for more after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
We have new aerial images of White Island, New Zealand today, and the number of dead in Monday's eruption has increased. You can see smoke and ash spewing from the volcano. Scientists now say there is a 40 to 60% chance it will blow again within the next day. That's delaying efforts to recover bodies. Officials now say 2 more people have died of their injuries, bringing the death toll to 8. 9 others are missing and presumed dead. More than 30 people suffered injuries, some of them catastrophic. It's believed there are no survivors after a small plane crash near a quiet rural community on a British Columbia island.
Well, it's just very scary. I mean, you don't think that something's going to crash out of the sky and your little island.
We heard a loud noise, and then the house kind of shook. And we thought, oh my God, what's going on?
The plane was turning around, spinning, out of control, and it was probably about turning around, spinning, out of control, and it was probably about 200 feet above me. And in 2 minutes, it was gone down, and it was flames and explosions, and it was terrible.
The pilot and an unconfirmed number of passengers were killed when the twin-engine propeller plane went down on the northwest corner of Gabriola Island near Vancouver Island last night. Transportation Safety Board officials arrived this afternoon. Here's what they say they are looking for.
We're expecting to get some radar information from NAV Canada, so we'll be looking at that, and then investigators on site will be doing their field work, which is basically looking at the wreckage and gathering as much information as they can while on site.
The plane went down in thick brush and scorch marks were visible on trees in the area of the crash. It was reportedly foggy at the time. Another factor the TSB will look into, and CBC News has just learned the pilot of this plane was a former TSB examiner himself. There was troubling testimony today at a congressional hearing into the safety of the Boeing 737 MAX aircraft and the credibility of the U.S. regulator that allowed it to fly. The plane was grounded last spring after two separate crashes left 346 people dead. As Susan Ormiston reports, today's testimony suggests both the aircraft maker and the FAA should have seen it coming.
Their photos haunt the hearing room. Those who died on two ill-fated flights. Their families reminding U.S. legislators these crashes were not random accidents, but predicated on faulty design and weak oversight by the FAA.
I'm not going to sign off on this airplane until I fly it myself.
But today the FAA had to answer to a stunning revelation. The month after Lion Air crashed, the FAA's own review predicted the MAX could crash 15 times over the aircraft's lifetime if no software changes were made. Yet the FAA kept the plane in the air until a second tragic crash.
Can either one of you admit to yourselves that the FAA made a mistake in not taking action on this Tarim report?
I would say that this is something that we need to look at very closely. And
was a mistake made?
Obviously, the result is not satisfactory.
Well,
so
you just can't bring yourself to say that we made a mistake?
It's not like no one raised alarms. Ed Pearson did, then a senior manager at a Boeing factory in Washington. 3 months before the crashes, he warned about serious production problems.
As I saw firsthand, the factory was stressed beyond anything in my experience.
He couldn't get traction to review production.
The U.S. regulators' investigation of these crashes has been as disappointing as Boeing's insistence that it had no systemic quality or safety issues.
His lawyer says Boeing was protected.
The reluctance here is hard to explain. Boeing is corporate royalty in this country, and apparently no one can touch them.
Hard to hear for Chris Moore from Scarborough, who lost his daughter Danielle.
I'm zigzagging and between, healing and despair.
This first Christmas will be difficult.
We would always open presents on Christmas, and Danielle's present was always the nicest.
Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Washington.
The mayor's new plan to hike your taxes to pay for city services just passed a big hurdle at City Hall today, but others warn the money it raises might still not be enough. I'm City Hall reporter Lauren Pelly, and I'll have more on that coming up.
The mayor's plan to hike taxes to pay for transit and housing just passed a major hurdle. As City Hall reporter Lauren Pelly explains, the move got unanimous backing from his executive committee, but some warn bigger challenges are still to come.
Toronto is booming. It's the fastest growing city in North America.
But Mayor John Tory says with that boom comes a challenge.
That we need to invest in our future to a further extent to accommodate the growth and to protect the city's success.
Today, his executive committee agreed, unanimously backing the mayor's plan to hike taxes to fund transit and housing projects. Next year, a special levy on residents' property tax bills is set to go up by 1%, costing the average Toronto household around $43. Those funds, coupled with slightly larger annual hikes over the next 5 years, could generate more than $6 billion for the city.
I think it's going to have an incredibly big impact.
Some of council's staunchest opponents of tax hikes are now backing the plan after recent reports highlighted the financial crunch facing city services. The support also follows back-to-back provincial governments quashing other potential revenue sources. The former Liberals blocked Toronto's push for road tolls, while the Tories scrapped a planned hike to the municipal share of gas tax revenue.
Hence, me realizing that the 1.5% of the increasing the city levy is probably the right thing to do.
The mayor's plan is now off to City Council for a final stamp of approval, and others warn that even bigger challenges lie ahead. The city still needs billions of dollars more for transit and housing, and that's not counting the millions of people expected to move to this city in the coming decades.
This property tax increase that the mayor has put forward will not pay for our transit system and our affordable housing proposals.
The TTC alone needs more than $30 billion just to maintain the current system, with even more cash required to expand services and buy new vehicles.
And I'm committed to continuing to work to secure billions more over time.
That means even with a tax hike, the mayor will still be knocking at the doors of both the federal and provincial governments. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he has promised the presidents of the U.S. and Mexico that Canada will proceed with ratification of the new trade deal as soon as possible. But first, that means getting some support from the opposition. Julie Van Duzen is in our parliamentary bureau. So, Julie, who does that support come from?
Well, every day is challenging in this new parliament. You have to remember they used to be, the majority government, the Liberals. Now it's a minority. So Justin Trudeau is always 13 seats short, so 13 votes short. And that includes on NAFTA, so he needs the support of another party. And today there were a lot of parties expressing concerns. And one area of concern they talked about a lot today is aluminum. So the concern is that this new NAFTA might make it easier for cheap imported aluminum to come in through Mexico from China and India into the North American market and undercut the aluminum sector in Canada, and much of that is in Quebec. So to be sure, the Bloc Québécois was saying very loudly and very clearly that they are not going to vote for this NAFTA deal, this new NAFTA deal, unless they get some assurances, some clear assurances that it won't hurt the aluminum sector in Quebec. Other parties are expressing concerns too. So take a listen.
We will not vote for something which is so strongly against Quebec's best interests if it only serves some other interests in Canada against Quebec interests.
Obviously, we're a party of free trade. The original agreement is a conservative agreement, so we want to see some certainty, but we will reserve our position until we've seen the text.
Okay, Julie, so what does the government say?
Well, the government is saying that the critics are wrong, that this is a very good deal for aluminum workers in Canada. And like I say, a lot of them are in Quebec. That it provides it has a provision that 70% of aluminum used in cars must come from North America. So that will definitely benefit Canada and particularly Quebec. And so the government said today that trade negotiators would make sure the opposition, you heard one of the MPs saying we want to look at the text. So everyone is kind of looking at the text, trying to figure out what everything is about. Trade negotiators would speak to the opposition, brief them, make sure they understood the merits of this new NAFTA. Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister, who just got back from Mexico, said, look, this is a good deal. Let's get on with it. Take a listen.
This is a good deal. The United States has found a domestic path to ratification, and it's now time, I believe, that it is absolutely in the Canadian national interest to get this deal done.
So, Dwight, to get the deal done, it must be voted on in all three legislatures. Now, our House of Commons is recessing on Friday for the winter break. It does not come back till the end of January, so it's not clear how a vote will happen here or in the United States, where they're very focused on impeachment right now, or in Mexico. And as I say, all three countries must vote for the deal to ratify it so that it can come into effect. So, many a slip between the cup and the lip.
We'll be talking about this again. Senior reporter, Julie Van Duzen in our parliamentary bureau in Ottawa. Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome, Dwight.
One individual has increasingly emerged as the face of youth climate activism, and today Greta Thunberg was named Times Person of the Year. The 16-year-old is the youngest person to ever be chosen for the honor by the U.S. magazine. The announcement of Person of the Year has been an annual tradition at Time for 92 years. In August 2018, Thunberg began skipping class once a week to protest outside the Swedish parliament. She has since inspired a global movement and galvanized millions to call for concrete action. Colette, I was showing off walking around out there without a jacket. Not so much today, though.
You won't be showing off if you've got the sniffles tomorrow. Now, will you,
I have it today.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's not the weather to not have the appropriate gear. We've got temperatures right now -7 to -9 we're seeing around the GTA, but the wind chill, hey, it feels like -15 to -18. That's what we're looking at. Now, at least those winds are going to ease somewhat through the overnight hours. They've changed direction a little bit. They will back off. They'll still be strong, but not as strong. We'll start the day off quite chilly, that's for sure, but at least we'll have some sunshine. And by Friday, if you are looking for something a little milder, I don't know if it's coatless weather, but as we head towards Friday, we're looking at the temperatures really going up. So look at what's going on with some of those squalls. We still have issues where we've got areas where you're into near whiteout conditions, essentially such low visibility as those winds push across the lakes. And then to the east there of Georgian Bay, especially one of the areas affected today around the Niagara region as well. Some really poor driving conditions, but even a little bit of light snow shower activity. We may pick up a centimeter or two before it finishes off here through the GTA, but it will be ending a little later on this evening. And then we get into a clearing trend. That's why we start off with the sunshine for tomorrow morning. Now, I will just point out that late day tomorrow, as a warm front passes, and eventually tomorrow evening, our winds get stronger from the southwest. As it passes, we may get just a little bit of flurry activity tomorrow in the afternoon. Clouds will certainly increase as the day wears on. Into Friday, we'll have more of that mix of sun and cloud, and then eventually more cloud cover pushing through. But it really will be a nice day. We'll take any sun that we can get, and we'll see our temperatures going up around 4 to 5 degrees for Friday. So we just have to get there. Saturday, things change up, though, significantly as we're actually going to see some rain showers moving in with the next system. But overnight tonight, a look at these readings. Wind chill at least -14. It may be, as I say, more towards -18 towards tomorrow morning, as it is in some areas right now that we're seeing around the GTA. Tomorrow afternoon, nice to see the temperature getting up almost everywhere. Okay, not Markham, but up to 0, up to freezing. And then it'll actually climb further tomorrow evening as we head into Friday because of that change in direction for those winds. So mix of sun and cloud on Friday. There's the rain showers Saturday. And then gradually those temperatures, Dwight, start to come back down again.
Back to reality.
Yes, that's right. Well, we all have to do it.
Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
They are flashing. If you know who this woman is, please contact the police because she had thrown an acidic substance on a toddler.
Imagine watching the news and seeing a suspect police are looking for, and it's your own mother. The crime, an acid attack on a child at a movie theater. Do you turn her in? You won't want to miss Maine Champagne's story. It's coming up next.
Liquid substance that was sprayed on the child has been sent to Center for Forensic Sciences, and it has been identified as some sort of acid.
It was random and shocking. A woman accused of spraying acid on a boy's neck and ears while he was waiting in line with his dad to buy movie tickets at Humber Cinemas. It happened back in November of 2015. Alverna Maria Lawrence was arrested and charged shortly after. But how did police find her? Her son turned her in. Jermaine Lawrence, or Maine Champagne, as he is now known, was on his first day of a new job when he found out police were looking for his mother. He had spent 7.5 years in and out of jail and was trying to turn his life around. Police were the last people he wanted any interaction with. I sat down with Maine Champagne, who is now a rapper, to talk about the difficult decision to turn on his own mother.
While I'm waiting in the lunchroom, I was watching the news, the morning news, and they are flashing, if you know who this woman is, please contact the police, because she had thrown an acidic substance on a toddler. And then I looked up and I saw, like, that's my mom. I was like, wow.
So you recognize her, and this person that they put out this wanted alert for,
was my own mother.
Accused of something like throwing, acid at a child, and that's your mom.
That's my mom, yo.
What went through your head when you saw that?
I was in shock and in disbelief, and I had to call my auntie Sandra, and I'm like, please turn on the news, please. And she's like, why? I said, I think my mother is wanted by the police, because I was conflicted, because my street values told me not to deal with the police.
At all.
But at the same time, she's been suffering from mental illness for years, and it's only gonna get worse. So I had to make a tough decision, and I had to contact the police.
I bet you took a lot of courage for you to do that.
It did.
That's not an easy thing to do.
It's not an easy thing. No.
Where you felt it was the right thing.
I thought it was the right thing to do.
What's your relationship like with your mother now?
She's still in no better health. But by law standards, you can't do anything unless a person is a harm to themselves or a harm to others. So I can only pray for her and just hope that she gets better.
And she's out there now?
She's out there.
Still suffering?
Still suffering.
And do you have any relationship, any contact with her?
I actually did see her a couple months ago.
Yeah.
She's still not coherent.
Talk about how you then are now trying to channel what you went through in your life and turn it into something positive through your art and your music.
I mean, like, there was always signs that I was supposed to do this. Like, I mean, as conflicted my relationship with my mother is, she had guided me in a path where she would make me take piano lessons, which is a help to me to this day.
Okay, so you can play the piano.
And through the piano, I learned to make production in prison, which led me to get the placement with Drake on his Comeback Season mixtape. So, like, even though I was in and out of the streets, I would always go back to music.
And that's your saving grace now.
It's my saving grace now. Oh, 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 oh.
Life is about choices, eh? And sometimes we make some choices that really can have lasting effects on our lives. When you look at what is going on in our city right now with the gun crime and the age of the kids, and you live that life, man. What do you, I don't know, what do you have to say to these kids?
To the youth, I can't really tell you what to do because I'm no angel. I live that life. But if you do decide to do things, look at risk versus reward, pros versus cons, and make the most calculated decision that you can.
I hear young people say, you know what, when you feel powerless, when you feel like you're not empowered, and you're growing up in some of these communities, you feel like a gun in your hand actually gives you power, man. It actually makes you feel like I have something.
Right.
Is that true? Like,
yeah, it might. I've seen a lot of situations where a lot of people say that, but then when they get to jail, there's no guns in there. And then you see the real character of who you really are in prison. So just remember that you might be a tough guy in the streets, but prison is a lot tougher people that have done a lot more time, that are more seasoned than you.
Wow. You survived it somehow, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for your time, man. We appreciate your message.
It's definitely life-changing. It's a lot of sleepless nights. Was it done intentionally? Was it an accident?
We're still having a hard time with it.
You got a million questions that you'll never have answers to.
Two men switched at birth. Now, 50 years later, they are reuniting with their rightful families. You won't want to miss their incredible story. That's coming up next. Imagine this, your first memories growing up with your brothers and sisters, parents and grandparents all should have been someone else's. It took 50 years before anyone realized that's what happened to two Newfoundland men. They were switched at birth in a town called Come By Chance. Here's Mark Quinn with how the men found each other and how it's changed their lives.
Clarence Hines is opening up about something painful. It isn't easy to talk about. It's something he rejected at first and is still trying to accept. This is the 11th house that Clarence has built. Hard work, but nothing compared to learning his identity was built on a mistake that's still rippling through two large families.
This picture here, me and Mom. Growing up, everyone said it looks like Mom, right?
Clarence may look like her, but she's not the woman who gave birth to him. After Clarence was born at the Come By Chance Cottage Hospital, he was sent home with the wrong family.
We're still having a hard time with it. Like some of my family members are still dealing with it now. It's very hard.
How would you describe it? He was switched at birth with this man, Craig Avery.
I don't know how you can describe it. It's so hurtful. It's like your heart is broken all the time.
The Come By Chance Cottage Hospital that once stood behind me was torn down in the mid-1980s. But this is where Clarence and Craig's lives first became entangled in 1962. An entanglement that wouldn't have been discovered if it weren't for a series of chance happenings that began 50 years later. The first one happened here. A few years ago, both Craig and Clarence were hired at Bull Arm, where they both worked in the same building on the Hebron project. They may have passed each other at work 100 times without thinking twice, until yet another unlikely chance meeting.
What's your father doing there?
Craig's wife, Tracy Avery, was also hired at Bull Arm, and she's the person who put it all together.
My first day there, I saw him, and I went to Craig right away. I said, my God, I said, there's somebody here who looks just like Clifford, which is Craig's brother.
For Clarence and Craig, this wasn't coming completely out of the blue. There had been hints before.
Growing up, I was told I didn't look like none of the family that I was growing up with.
Courtney was born on Father's birthday.
But now it was getting real. Eventually, Craig had a DNA test done that showed he and his brother Clifford couldn't have had the same father. And then, eventually, Clarence had a test that showed his DNA was a 100% match with Clarence's brother, Clifford. It's still playing out because they have questions that can never be answered. The Come By Chance Hospital and the people who work there are gone.
I can't believe that trust in a hospital. You go in to have a baby and here they are sending you home with somebody else.
That can't be fixed now, and they both have family members they'll never know. Clifford, the brother who some said could be Clarence's twin, died after the DNA test. They never met. And their parents, all four of them, died before any of this was known.
What hurts a lot is knowing that your parents are gone to their grave and they have no idea, right? And they never will.
Craig and Clarence have been spending more time together. They do have a lot of questions for each other. And this year promises to be special, their first Christmas with their newfound families.
I had a happy childhood and I had a happy teenage years and growing up. Everything was good and like they're still my family, right? You know, I got two big families now, and hopefully one day it'll all be one big family.
12 families moved into their new homes today, wrapping up Habitat for Humanity's biggest ever build in the GTA. Coming up, we'll show you around and introduce you to some of them.
As the song goes, there's no place like home for the holidays, but for some in this city, home isn't such a welcoming place. That's changed for 12 families in Scarborough today as Habitat for Humanity handed them keys to brand new homes, and our Taylor Simmons was there.
Open it. Ah, yes. Go, 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 go.
It's a day 3 years in the making.
Your neighbors.
A dozen families stepping into a new future.
How are you feeling in your new home? I'm very excited. I didn't get any sleep last night waiting for this. That's yours. You like it, eh? Good night. Good night.
For Dion Carter, the move-in is a relief. Before this, she shared a 3-bedroom apartment with her brother and 3 children.
Very tight. We didn't have control of the heating or anything like that, so when it did get cold, it was very cold for us to manage. There was a pest problem in the building, so...
1, 2, 3!
The project began in 2016. It's the largest build in Habitat for Humanity's 3-decade history in the GTA. The finished development includes 50 homes, housing 228 people, including 145 kids.
This is home, this is a community, this is a future that they had previously only imagined.
To get a home, recipients must be in need and have an income. They have to put in 500 hours of sweat, too.
Which one's my room? Right there.
For Carter's son, Zavon, who lives with ADHD, the building process didn't just give him a new home, it gave him new direction.
I had a lot of fun doing the volunteering here. So when my teachers told me about, oh yeah, it's an apprenticeship program that deals with all the trades and all the stuff, and I said, that sounds like a great idea, like why not?
And I'm very grateful that those people talked to him, those people showed him that he had no limitations, even though some people may think he did. And now he can turn that limitation into a successful career at some point.
Carter showed her appreciation today as the group marked their success together.
We are so happy that Habitat exists, and we are grateful for all the volunteers, donors, board members, and everyone that made this dream a reality. Thank you.
Taylor Simmons, CBC News, Toronto.
Tears of joy. That's our show for tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Have a great night, everybody.